it's the hopelessness. They take their own lives after working a normal day seeing patients. But there are risk factors. There are warning signs. The major one includes previous suicidal ideation or previous suicide attempts. Psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, mood disorders, trauma, as well as drug and alcohol issues really harbor feelings of hopelessness and severe anxiety. Loss of functionality can significantly heighten the risk of suicide. Welcome to our new episode of The Virtual Psychiatrist Unmuted. I'm your host, Dr. Muhammad Ali Rifai. Today is a deeply important conversation, one that needs our urgent attention, and it needs our compassionate understanding. This is a topic that I have focused on throughout my career because today we confront an issue that remains tragically pervasive, yet it is shrouded in silence and stigma. We're going to be talking today about suicidality and suicide risk assessment. We're also going to talk about how suicidality and suicide affects our physician colleagues as well as the general public. This is a sobering statistic. Every 11 minutes in the United States, someone loses their life to suicide. Now, we've gone away from using the term committed suicide. Suicide is an event that we consider as end-stage psychiatric illness. Somebody who's struggled in life with psychiatric illness, and suicide is the tragic end of their struggle with their psychiatric illness. Over 50,000 Americans lose their life to suicide every year. And we think that nearly 1.7 millions attempt to take their own life every year. It's quite unfortunate. Now, what is especially alarming is that we also see that elevated risk among physicians, among other professionals, dentists, lawyers, who also experience suicide rates that are significantly higher than the general population. We also know that male physicians die by suicide at more than twice the rate of their counterparts. And we know that female physicians die at a staggering rate, 3 times higher than the general population. Now, as someone who has dedicated over 2 decades of my professional life to be involved in assessment of individuals who have suicidal ideation, and with programs that are aimed at supporting our physician colleagues, supporting their mental health issues, supporting other professionals who are experiencing psychiatric illness, as well as the general population as an emergency psychiatrist. I have witnessed firsthand how the combination of untreated psychiatric illness and overwhelming professional pressures, as well as systematic barriers, contributes to this devastating reality. Now, we always wondered, why is suicidality and suicide is still so much surrounded by silence, shrouded in shame? People don't want to talk about it. See, stigma is one of our greatest adversaries, and it is basically a linchpin in our ability to combat suicidality and completed suicide. People who are professionals, they feel repercussions. They feel societal judgment that's associated with mental health struggles. Professionals, as well as physicians who encounter severe psychiatric illness and experience suicidal ideation, prevents their ability to come forward and identify themselves as somebody who is being afflicted with severe psychiatric illness and suicidal ideation. I'm giving this talk to my colleagues and to the general public because I think we must work on dismantling these barriers. We must be able to create a safe and a supportive space for open dialogue where those individuals in the general public, as well as professionals, physicians, lawyers, other professionals who are seeking help, feel that it is acceptable. They should feel that it's also encouraged because we want them to be safe. Let's talk a little bit about recognizing the signs. Often, individuals suffering from severe distress or psychiatric illness don't vocalize their pain. Instead, they are silently suffering. They carry the burden of anxiety, depression, hopelessness. Things that these are symptoms that are invisible, but they carry a crushing weight on a person's soul, especially if there's unresolved trauma, physical, emotional, psychiatric. These feelings may be masked by a facade of normalcy. We see our colleagues who end up taking their own lives. They see patients in the morning, they function normally. And then when they go back home, it's the darkness that envelops them, it's the hopelessness, and they take their own lives after working a normal day seeing patients. Because we professionals pride ourselves on our resilience and self reliance. We don't want to look weak. We don't want to say that we're depressed and experiencing suicidal ideation, but there are risk factors. There are warning signs. The major one includes previous suicidal ideation or previous suicide attempts, psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, mood disorders, trauma, as well as drug and alcohol issues, really harbor feelings of hopelessness and severe anxiety. Also, chronic physical illness, particularly those accompanied by pain and loss of functionality, can significantly heighten the risk of suicide. Understanding risk factors alone is not sufficient, is not enough. We must recognize the protective factors also, those elements that give hope and that are going to enable us to tap into those protective factors and marshal those factors to see if they can help us with getting the person, whether it's from the general public or a fellow physician colleagues or a fellow professional, to see if they can seek treatment, give them hope and strength, especially if they've gotten effective clinical treatment in the past and they've gotten better. If there's a strong family and community support, if there's strong connections, access to mental health resources, especially also if they're able to develop problem solving and they're able to walk through their dark mind and see if they can work on correcting those cognitive distortions that sometimes can lead to these desperate feelings where a person thinks about ending their life. We can also help people improve their conflict resolution skills, and that sometimes can lead to them feeling much, much better. Our task is clear. We want to foster these protective factors while effectively addressing the mitigating risk factors. Now, let's delve into some critical role of suicide risk assessment. Let's talk about how we do that. How do we tap into those issues that are harming a person's ability to cope with their stress and leading them to actually not wanting to continue on living? Effective risk assessment is not just intuition, it is a comprehensive assessment, systematic, disciplined process of evaluation. And as healthcare providers, our goal is to assess the imminent risk accurately and act accordingly. Now, when we do an assessment on somebody, we consider multiple dimensions: psychiatric, medical history, current mental status, societal issues, social issues, and professional support. And we talk explicitly about the details of the suicidal ideation, a specific plan, the means, the lethality. How is the person wanting to kill themselves? We also gauge a person's intent and ambivalence toward living versus dying. When I started about 20 years ago focusing on this topic as an emergency psychiatrist at a local hospital in my area, one of my first experiences was talking to my colleagues in multiple departments in the hospital and doing talks. And I was able to utilize a movie that was made about suicide and suicide risk assessment and completed suicide. The title of the movie was The Bridge. And it talks about multiple people who have experienced suicidal ideation, but actually shows an individual who actually became a motivational speaker by the name of Kevin Hines. He talks about his story, how he developed suicidal ideation, and how he acted on his suicidal thoughts and attempted to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And here we see him talking and telling us about his story. And as he talks about his story, I want you to come back to the things that I've talked about: suicide risk assessment, symptoms, hopelessness, helplessness, and how he went through with his attempt. Let's listen.
The ideas of suicide, if I'm completely honest with myself, have been there for a long, long time. Years, way before I was diagnosed. But it was just touching on it, like, oh, I could just kill myself. But the real thought process of actually going to do it and commit the act started when I'd say about 99, and that's when I cut my wrist.
At the end of his junior year in high school, he had huge mood swings. And during his senior year, they were just compelling. I mean, he was constantly either very high or very low. That was really a fight. That's when Kevin was at his worst. There were times where he couldn't even speak, and there were times where he wouldn't stop speaking.
I was hallucinating, and I had made the assumption that there were bugs in my bed and stuff, and they were like stuff that were giving me AIDS and stuff like that, and I was just completely off the wall. I hadn't been sexually active for years, yet I thought I had AIDS, and it was all in my head. And I sprayed my bed sheets with a disinfectant, like a deodorizer or something like that. But I sprayed my bed sheets, and I sleep in that. I inhaled it all night long, which caused the hallucinations to become greater and greater. And so I got up out of bed, sat at my desk, and I must have written 5 versions of my suicide letter until I realized these are mean. I can't write them like this. So I wrote a real nice one, or something I thought was nice. I mean, it's a suicide letter, so I guess it said something like, "Mom, you're not always right. Don't think you are, but I love you. Dad, stop being so mean. You're hurting people."
He had a terrible episode, and there was no comment with regard to suicide. It was a commentary with regard to hearing voices and difficulty remaining under control. And I called his psychiatrist the Sunday night prior and had a conversation with him, and the psychiatrist told me, "No, don't worry about it. Everything is going to be fine." Then Kevin and I stayed up and we chatted about it, and he seemed to be fine, almost completely calmed.
Our conversations go like this when he's mad at me. He tells me to sit down in my chair, and he basically yells at me. So I had told him that I don't want to. I said I don't want to hurt anybody anymore. I have to go away, or something like that. And he said, "You have an obligation to stay here for your family. You have an obligation to me, who's raised you, given you everything you want. You have an obligation to live for your brother, your sister," but he was, he's mad the whole time. So I said, all right, I'm not going to do anything, Dad. Don't worry. And he was like, "Do I have to take you to the hospital?" Stuff like that. I was like, no, it's all right. I said, "Let me just sleep on it and we'll talk about it in the morning, okay? I'm really tired, Dad, I'm really tired." So he woke me up the next morning about 7 o'clock, because I got maybe 2 hours sleep. And he woke me up and he said, "You're coming to work with me." I was like, "No." He's like, "No, come on, I'm worried about you. I'm really worried about you. You gotta go." I was like, "Dad, I'm fine." The entire time lying through my teeth, because I knew I was gonna go to the bridge and jump.
I said, "Listen, why don't I take the day off and we'll go do something?" And he said, "Nope, I'd rather go to school."
I kissed him goodbye on the cheek, and I was like, all right, that's the last time I ever had to kiss my dad goodbye. I'll never see him again, and he'll never see me. And I went to my English class, dropped all my other classes. I took the K out to the 28, out to the bridge, and the whole time I was just bawling my eyes out, just crying, talking to myself on the bus. I had stopped before I got on the 28. I had stopped at Walgreens, and I bought my last meal, Starburst Skittles, and went out the bridge. Found a place that I thought, all right, it's not too close to the pillar. I won't hit the pillar. I'll just hit the water. I'll either drown or I'll die on impact, or I'll have a heart attack. So I got there, stood there for 40 minutes at that spot, just crying my eyes out. Joggers, bikers, runners, tourists, whatever, running by, walking by, looking at me, didn't say anything. That's not their part. It's not their problem, but anyway. And this woman, she came up to me. She said, in a German accent, I think it was a German accent, she said, "Will you take my picture?" I was like, your picture? Woman, I'm gonna kill myself. What is wrong with you? You can't see the tears pouring out my face, but she couldn't. She was on her own hype. So I took the camera, took her picture, said, "Miss, have a nice day." Turned back to the traffic, turned to the bay, said, "Fuck it, nobody cares." Pardon my French. And I hurled over the bridge. See, what most people do, apparently, is they get on the ledge outside of the bridge and they stand there, and people can talk them out of it, you know, or pull them up or whatever. I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it. I just wanted to die. So I hurtled over the railing with my hands, and I was falling head first. And the second my hands left the bar or the railing, I said, I don't want to die. I said, what am I gonna do? This is it. I'm dead. So I said, well, maybe if I get head or feet first, maybe I'll live. So I thought, all right, it's worth a shot. So my head was falling like this, and I pushed myself back somehow, and I landed literally like I was sitting down, kind of like maybe a little more elevated with the legs, and I hit with my feet. And I guess the water treaded through my boots a little bit, so maybe helped the impact. And the boots are pretty tough, so. And I went down about, I'd say 50 feet. I didn't know which way I was up or down. I was like, am I still alive? Because it's like a 4 to 7 second fall. It's like 120 miles per hour. I think that 7 seconds below terminal velocity, or like the velocity that the downslope skiers get, you know? So I was awake, I was alive. I was swimming my butt off to get somewhere where there was air. So I reached the surface, I guess I saw some sort of light. And I was screaming for help, but I couldn't really scream. My voice was gone. I couldn't yell. I was like, help me. And I felt something brush by my leg. I was like, oh, great. I didn't die jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. A shark is going to eat me. I was like, this is ridiculous. Years later, I found out, matter of fact, last year, I found out it wasn't a shark. It was a seal circling me, and apparently it was the only thing keeping me afloat. And you cannot tell me that wasn't God, because that's what I believe.
To my fellow physicians and healthcare providers, I say this: never underestimate the complexity of this evaluation. We see that a lot of individuals who end up committing suicide had seen a healthcare provider within a month of them committing suicide. It's even more for healthcare professionals. They interact with other professionals and they've talked with other professionals about their feelings. But suicide risk assessment requires humility, sensitivity, and a continuous reassessment. We want to document our evaluation. It's not merely a clinical accountability, but it's a living testament to our commitment to safeguarding human lives. I want to touch base also about suicide contracts. They're often misunderstood tools. While they can facilitate a dialogue, these contracts should never replace a thorough ongoing risk assessment. People will say, yes, I promise I'm not going to kill myself, but they go on and complete suicide. They're not foolproof safeguards. Our genuine therapeutic relationship, empathy, and a consistent clinical vigilance is the true lifeline for an individual who is experiencing suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation. To prevent suicide, we must intervene at every level, encourage screenings. In medical school, I can tell you, medical students at a high risk for suicidal ideation and suicidality. Medical residents in residency program and in healthcare settings. We need to foster supportive therapeutic relationships. We should promote easy and stigma-free access to effective treatments, ranging from psychotherapy to medication management to maybe transcranial magnetic stimulation to crisis intervention. And now we have the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can do that. You can tag 988 on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. a social worker will come online and talk to the person. Effective treatment also for individuals who are experiencing suicidal ideation involves a combination of pharmacological intervention, psychotherapy, we talked about holistic support, medication treatments such as antidepressants, mood stabilizers, some that even have proven reliability in terms of preventing suicidal ideation, as well as medications that will reduce anxiety and address the underlying psychiatric issue. Talk therapy, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, as well as other evidence based psychotherapeutic interventions can significantly reduce suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation. And it teaches our patients, as well as our colleagues, effective coping mechanisms. They understand how to achieve emotional regulation, and their distress tolerance increases. They're able to cope with stressful situations. These therapeutic interventions also can help individuals reframe the negative thought patterns that they experience that leads them to talking about suicidal ideation in their minds. And it enhances their ability to envision positive futures, not foreshortened lives. Social support systems also can substantially impact recovery and resilience. Family involvement, supportive communities, as well as a strong therapeutic alliance can provide the essential foundation for healing and recovery. It empowers patients with effective problem solving and conflict resolutions to develop further skills to manage their own life stressors constructively, and it reduces the feelings of despair and hopelessness. Encouraging continuous engagement and support, structured programs, and groups can really lead to enhanced treatment effectiveness and better outcomes. We can avoid suicide. There are some health systems that are aiming toward zero suicide, and these efforts have been successful. It had reduced hopelessness, and people, as patients as well as professionals, want to go on living. To our fellow physician colleagues, other professionals, remember, self care is not selfish. Our professional ethos of healing others should not get in the way of our ability to function and our ability to not care for ourselves. By openly discussing our own vulnerabilities, our own struggles, we pave the way for systematic changes. We can reduce stigma. We can foster environments where help seeking is honored, not hidden. Finally, this is a heartfelt call for action. No one, a physician, a patient, another professional, should face these struggles alone. Help is available. Help is effective. Help is life saving. There's opportunities for help, and people should not feel hopeless. I urge you, as my listeners, to reach out, speak up, and offer support to those around you. Together, through compassion, understanding, as well as a dedicated vigilance to looking at around us, to our colleagues, to our patients, we can break the silence, we can challenge the stigma, and ultimately save lives. We saw that video. He regretted it. The minute he jumped off the bridge, he regretted it. He wanted to go on living. And this is why I'm giving this talk, because I want my patients to continue on living a happy, prosperous life. This is Dr. Muhammad Ali Rifai. I'm the virtual psychiatrist unmuted. Thank you for joining me in this urgent conversation. And until next time, be safe, be hopeful, and care deeply for others and yourself.